Off video.
Okay, hi and welcome everybody. I'm excited to see some people starting to come into the room. This is a great virtual space, so certainly in this new format, want to just encourage people as they're joining in to use the chat, say hello, put your name, maybe what part of the country you're dialing in from today. We certainly have a little bit of a spread in terms of the panelists that are joining us today. So welcome everybody, and I think in an effort to get us started and to maximize the time that we have with all of you, I'm probably going to start us off. So hi again and welcome. This is the session that's titled Supporting the Economic Integration of Internationally Educated Immigrants and Refugees. My name is Deborah Means-West, and I'm the Director of Network and Resource Development at World Education Services, WES for short, and I work specifically on the Global Talent Bridge program. And I'll be your moderator for this afternoon's event. For the next 50 minutes, we're going to hear from 3 speakers as they share with us information about how the use of innovative solutions and programming is supporting the inclusion of internationally trained and educated immigrants and refugees. As many of you joining us this afternoon likely know through the work that each of you do, many immigrants and refugees possess valuable and highly prized skills and experience. Yet they often face employment barriers to being able to fully leverage and utilize their skills based on barriers such as English language proficiency, a lack of access to networks, difficulty in validating credentials earned abroad, and a lack of access to training or programs that provide upskilling. But our panelists are going to speak more to that in just a bit. It's our intent that through this session, you're going to learn how key stakeholders are working to support immigrants in building a more inclusive environment. To ensure clarity on the flow of today's session, we're going to start off with some general introductions, followed by an opportunity for each of our panelists to dive a little deeper into the ways in which they are seeing immigrants and refugees more fully included. And we're doing this in the hopes that it's going to pique the interest and raise greater awareness around how each of you might think about tapping into this population more fully. We'll then move into a Q&A with some hopeful pre-constructed questions, but we also want to make sure that we're hearing from each of you. So please remember that during the course of today's session, please send in your questions through the chat or the question and answer box that's located on the screen. This way we can really make sure that we're doing our best to incorporate any questions that you guys have throughout the session. We also want to certainly do our part to be informative for this session, but also interactive. And so if I can just put a plug in there for social media and remind everybody that if you are on Twitter or if you're on Facebook, and if you hear something that you feel you really want to share out, don't forget to use the hashtag for Intersect2021, tag CoWave. This way we can really do our part to also ensure that, not only are we being informative for our group in this virtual space, but that we're also sharing out the information we're hearing with our personal, our professional, and our social networks that aren't able to join us here today. So let's get started and do some introductions for the panelists that are joining us today. We're going to do the introductions in the order of which they will be speaking. And while I'm doing this, again, I just want to encourage everybody, feel free to use the chat, put in there your name, where you're joining us from, what part of the country you're tuning in from, so that way we can also make sure that we're doing our part to get an introduction to each of you in this virtual space. So to start us off, we're really lucky to be joined by our first panelist, Teresa Weisel. And Teresa has over 30 years of experience in higher education administration. She currently serves as the Vice President of Workforce Development and Community Education at Westchester Community College, part of the State University of New York, otherwise known as SUNY. The division houses programs and services that support workforce development and lifelong learning to over 12,000 residents annually in Westchester and Putnam counties, as well as in the New York metro area. Programs provided include English as a second language, public workforce training programs, and other programs to support student success and community and business engagement. Ms. Weisel is also serving as the Executive Director of the Community Community College Consortium for Immigrant Education, commonly referred to as CCCIE. It's a network of community colleges and other organizations that are committed to expanding programs for immigrants and leveraging the role that community colleges play in successful immigrant education. CCCIE is hosted and led by Community College in Westchester, or Westchester Community College. I should also note that in 2014, the White House recognized Ms. Weisel as a champion of change for her contributions to workplace citizenship programs. Ms. Weisel is also a National Community College Hispanic Council Fellow and a SUNY Chancellor's Award recipient. We're really fortunate to have her joining us today as a speaker, so thank you for joining us. We're also very excited to hear from Dr. Jose Ramon Fernandez-Pena. Jose Ramon is the founder and executive director of the WelcomeBack Initiative, a program that assists immigrant health professionals living in the United States through the steps required to enter the US health workforce. Over the past 20 years, the WelcomeBack Initiative has worked with over 20,000 participants from 168 countries, and thousands have returned to the health workforce. The WelcomeBack Initiative's 11 centers are in 9 states, with 2 more centers opening later this year, one of which we're going to hear from briefly a little later. A founding member of the steering committee of the Imprint Coalition, Jose Ramon is also the director of the Health Professions Advising at Northwestern University, where he leads the university's efforts to support students interested in health careers. And he is also the president of the American Public Health Association. Thank you so much for giving us some time today to speak with you. The last presenter that we're excitingly going to hear from is Janine Janowski, and she is the president of Richard J. Daley College. President Janowski has over 30 years of experience in higher education and biomedical innovation, serving in executive leadership positions in higher education as well as business. President Janowski is an expert in developing and implementing innovative curriculum and higher education programs and initiatives, leveraging public-private philanthropic partnerships, specifically workforce and job readiness programs, and stackable academic credentials. Prior to joining the college, she served in a number of faculty and executive leadership positions at institutions of higher education and nonprofits, as well as being a founder of a for-profit company. President Janowski's leadership has been broadly impactful. She has a national model for public-private philanthropic partnerships that was recognized in Forbes, and she's earned the United States White House Champion of Change Award. Thank you as well for joining us. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Deborah. I'll be your host and your moderator with this amazing panel. And I'm joining us here on behalf of World Education Services, a nonprofit social enterprise that's dedicated to helping internationally educated individuals achieve their educational and professional goals in the United States, as well as in Canada. In 2011, West Global Talent Bridge was formed and charged with furthering and reinvigorating the West mission in 3 core areas. 1, we want to elevate the issue of immigrant integration and inclusion. We want to develop programs and policies to meet the needs of skilled immigrants. And finally, we want to serve as the hub of a network that advances opportunities for skilled immigrants to contribute their talents to their full potential. We achieve this by joining with institutional partners, community-based organizations, and policymakers to help immigrants and refugees use their skills, leverage their training, and achieve their academic and professional goals. So looking at the organizations and the titles of attendees that are joining us from workforce development agencies, from the business community, from community colleges and adult education, to name a few, it's no surprise probably to all of you that an estimated 1 in 6 US workers is an immigrant, making up a vital part of our country's labor force in a wide range of industries. But what might be a surprise to some, if not even all of you, is that more than 2 million immigrants and refugees with a college degree are currently unemployed or underemployed, also commonly referred to as being underutilized. But thankfully, through progressive work of strong immigrant leaders, innovative program models and community partnerships, and invested stakeholders across the country, such as the ones we're going to hear from today, there are steps that are being taken to move the needle on better supporting this population. And one group specifically, community colleges, are going to share some of the steps that they are taking with us today. As some of you may know, community colleges serve as gateways to higher education for many immigrants. And according to the Community College for Consortium on Immigrant Education, roughly about 25% of the student body at community colleges nationwide are immigrants. Community colleges provide access to education, skills training, and English language proficiency that is crucial for immigrants to successfully integrate into and contribute to their communities and to the country. So without further, I'm now going to pass it on to our first panelist, Teresa, so that she can share with us the role that community colleges are playing in this work. Over to you, Terry.
Thank you, Deborah. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you from sunny New York, where we're experiencing 60-degree temperatures and a beautiful fall day, a little different than we experienced last week. We had an early winter. Some of you here may know what I'm talking about. But in any event, I'm so delighted to be here, and I thank COABE for really bringing together the field, especially this afternoon as we speak about immigrant and refugee integration, that crosses so many of our sectors. As adult educators, we're residing in community colleges, in community-based organizations, many of us in faith-based organizations and other adult ed providers. And it's really in this forum that we can learn from each other and collectively impact the whole integration of immigrants and refugees more impactfully than any one of us could do on our own. So as Deborah mentioned, I serve as Vice President for Workforce Development at Westchester Community College, and I also serve as Executive Director of the Community College Consortium for Immigrant Education. CCCIE is a national network of community colleges whose mission is to strengthen the capacity of colleges that accelerate immigrant and refugee success and integration. We do that through our education and training programs, recognizing that we're in a very unique position to impact the social, economic, and educational integration of immigrants and refugees in our service areas. I work here at Westchester Community College. We're very proud to lead CCCIE in a county that is both one of the most affluent counties in the nation and a county that has very large urban areas, home to Yonkers, the third largest city in New York State, and serving a very rich and diverse population of residents, many of whom speak a language other than English at home and were not born in the United States. So it's in that context that Westchester Community College in 2008 was delighted to launch CCCIE, really the national reflection of the work that we do every day locally to support the integration of immigrants and refugees. CCCIE provides best practices, technical assistance to community colleges, really serves as a catalyst and a convener for community colleges and other stakeholders. And we work with national partners such as West Global Talent Bridge and the WelcomeBack Initiative. And many of you on this panel, participating in this panel today, to expand not only practices, but to support policy and advocate for change that supports immigrant and refugee success. Deborah mentioned some of the work that community colleges do in the field of immigrant integration. And I would argue, and I know many of you on the call would support this, that community colleges are perfectly positioned to serve immigrants and refugees. It's core to our mission. It's inherent in what we do every day to provide access to opportunity to all members of our service area. We prepare individuals to train and then enter middle skill jobs, those jobs that require more than a high school diploma, but less than a four-year degree. And at the same time, create pathways that lead to further education at our sister schools that provide bachelor's degrees and beyond. So it's sort of inherent in our DNA to support the career training and the advancement of immigrants and refugees. Our community college philosophy is one that speaks of meeting people where they are and helping individuals to fill gaps. And immigrants and refugees come to this country with enormous assets, they themselves ready and able to enter the workforce and fully participate in their communities. But often they do have gaps in their skills training, in their language proficiency, in the fact that they don't understand business networks and business acumen and business culture in the US. And were it be for those gaps, let's call them, they are perfectly positioned to enter the workforce. And so community colleges serve to fill those gaps. Again, it's incumbent on us to be prepared to do so, and to do so with flexibility and with a dynamism that responds to the changing profile of immigrants and refugees as they come into our communities. I'm going to just mention some of the programs that are offered at community colleges, but I know that President Janowski wants to speak specifically about the work as an example that's happening at Daley College, and then looking forward to in the conversational and Q&A section of this panel to perhaps provide you with some other examples. But some of the work that you are all doing and that sister community colleges are doing across the country is offering industry contextualized ESL. Many of us have taken the iBest model that originated in Washington State and customized it and modified it to work for our communities and within our funding structures. And clearly that iBest model is one that integrates basic skills training and basic education with vocational or occupational skills. And so we've seen great success in creating on-ramps for immigrants and refugees, many of them that come with skills and experience and education from their home countries in an effort to fast track them into the career areas that they left behind. These often serve as bridges or on-ramps to those careers and allow immigrants and refugees to feel connected again to that profession that they may have left behind. In addition to that, many of the community colleges that are part of CCCIE are invested in job readiness and business culture programs that allow individuals to revise their resumes, learn our interview protocols and processes, prepare for jobs, and engage and network through internships or volunteer opportunities or other applied learning opportunities with employers in the area. All of these services are provided regularly by community colleges across the country. Many of our community colleges offer their career services through the community in partnership with CBOs and other adult serving organizations in their networks. I would say that the work that we do is not perfect. There are challenges for community colleges as we seek to fully serve immigrants and refugees. And much of those challenges have to do with how we communicate and articulate what can be a complicated system, the community college system. And so one resource that I'm happy to share with all of you is a guide that CCCIE wrote in partnership with West Global Talent Bridge several years ago, and we'll make sure to put that link in the chat, that talks about how we can better explain who we are, what our role is in the higher ed sector, how frontline staff can better and more directly serve immigrants and refugees, and how we can work more closely with CBOs. It is a document that has been quite useful to community colleges as they work to engage with other partners in their area to most fully support immigrants and refugees. The last thing that I'll say is that we don't do this work alone. And so much of our challenge is how we engage with community-based organizations to offer those wraparound support services that are so critical to this population. How we support childcare, transportation, housing, how we support financial burdens, and how we help these immigrants and refugees navigate what can be the complicated process of seeking funding for the work that we do, either through government or private philanthropy. And so it's an ongoing process. It's one that we do with passion because it's so core to our mission, and one that we do really in partnership with so many of you and the organizations that you represent here this afternoon. Deb?
Thank you so much for that great information, Terry, just about, taking a step back and recognizing the role that community colleges play in terms of really helping to include and integrate this population. So I'd now like to pass it over to Jose Ramon to share with us a little bit specifically about the Welcome Back model and the initiative, how it started, but also, listening to Terry talking about just the partnerships, I think this is such an innovative approach because it really does take the partnerships with local educational resources, in this case, colleges, to be able to bridge the gap between the pool of internationally trained health professionals already in the United States and the US health sector's need for a diverse workforce. So please welcome Jose Ramon.
Thank you, Deborah. And I also wanted to thank Tere for bringing up the fact that we all know, but it's worth repeating, that the people we serve come to us with a very large and complex context. And we need to be cognizant of that context in order to make the appropriate referrals in addition to the services that we already offer. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the Welcome Back Initiative. It's a program that started 20 years ago in California. And the intent of the program is very simple. It's to connect community assets with community needs. And this is essentially seen in a couple of ways. One, the fact that there continues to be shortages in all areas of health services, in urban settings, in rural settings, and in suburban settings. There are needs for new nurses, for new doctors, for new mental health professionals, for new rad techs, for new respiratory therapists. The shortages of health professionals is ongoing. The second layer is the fact that in addition to the shortage of professionals, the lack of diversity of the health workforce in and of itself continues to compound the nation's racial and ethnic disparities in health outcomes. So not only do we need nurses who can speak the languages of the population they serve speak, that understand the culture from which this population is coming from. The growth of the program started in partnership initially between City College of San Francisco and San Francisco State University. And it was a natural birthplace for this program because of our connections to the community college. In a not very formal study in a couple of ESL classes at Mount San Antonio College in the Los Angeles area, one of my colleagues just did a couple of questions and found out that in every ESL class they hosted, 1 in 10 students had a health profession in their country of origin. So that's where we found the first batch of people that would be able to serve, to reach, and to offer them services in order to get them back to the health workforce. In a nutshell, again, the work of the Welcome Back Centers is an assessment of the participants when they come to us. We want to understand who they were in the country of origin, who they are right now, and what they wish to do in the future. And then with that information, we provide them with pathways to get them to where they want to go. And we guide them through those processes. Oftentimes, it's our job to let them know that the path they're interested in pursuing may be unattainable for X, Y, or Z reasons. For example, because of the number of years they may have been away from their profession, because their command of the English language at this point is not what it needs to be in order for them to prepare for licensure exams or even for job interviews. So, understanding those issues, we developed an accelerated health-focused ESL curriculum exactly to help these individuals get from no hablo inglés to good morning, my name is Jose Ramon and I'm here applying for the respiratory tech program. In addition, we provide and developed a class called the Introduction to the U.S. Health System, through which we aim to demystify the complex animal that the U.S. health sector is. In most countries, as you probably know, you have doctors or you don't have doctors, you have nurses or you don't have nurses. In here you have LVNs, LPNs, medical assistants, nurse practitioners, RNs, MSN, DR, PHNs. So if you don't know what the workplace looks like, it's oftentimes difficult to find yourself in a job in that context, especially when the pathway to your desired or original profession may not be feasible. So we try to support our participants in their decision-making process, answer any questions they may have about it, and then guide them, hold their hands literally oftentimes as they pursue these pathways. As I was saying in the beginning, we're cognizant of the fact that they come to us with a larger context, that most often immigrants and refugees in the United States did not wake up one morning and get on a plane and flew to Chicago, where I am, but probably were fleeing war or economic situations or natural disasters or following family or political persecution. And they bring with them that trauma and that history of losing their country, losing their language, losing their professional identity, their family, their social standing. And understanding these circumstances is imperative in order to A, create a space where our participants can heal or can make peace with those losses, and B, supporting them as they mourn those losses and begin to look to the future as to what may be feasible for me today. And then we also present them with alternatives or possibilities that build on their personal and professional history in order to get from driving Uber to a job in the health sector that may not be exactly what they were doing in their country of training or their country of origin, but that at least utilizes a part of their professional persona in some constructive way. We are careful not to point people down to the bottom of the career ladder if it's possible, and rather to point them up, to point individuals that may have years and years of training and practice into master's level programs or doctoral programs or research programs or jobs that do not require additional education. In the past 20 years, again, we have served, it's almost 21,000 people right now, and thousands of them have re-entered the health workforce. Primarily successful with nurses, because the pathway for them is fairly straightforward. Our second most successful group is physicians, even though it's quite challenging to get them to a point where they can successfully attain a residency training program. But because of the level of training, they're the ones that have the most options. So we've been very successful in guiding them into Masters of Public Health programs or careers in the pharmaceutical industry, or as educators themselves, or as research associates, or in policy or administration roles throughout the health sector. An important exercise for us has been to understand and be very vocal about the fact that the hospital is not the health sector. It's an element of the health sector that most people are seeing in primary care clinics or community-based clinics, that there are non-clinics, community-based organizations that serve a lot of people, such as the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association, Planned Parenthood, a number of settings that provide a lot of health services that are not in a clinic or in a hospital setting. It's been very important to work with our partners. In fact, the majority of the WelcomeBack centers right now are hosted or co-hosted by a community college across the nation, because they tend to be the most flexible for this kind of work, because they tend to provide all the essential services that our participants need. And because we have people like Dr. Janowski at Daley College in Chicago who want to work in this space, who are already doing something about it and can see the opportunity. Immigrants and refugees go first to community colleges, typically to learn their English or to get their citizenship preparation classes or something like that. So it's a welcoming space. It's an environment where our population can thrive easily, that is not threatening. They see a lot of people who look like them, who sound like them, who speak like them. referrals are easy from one person to another. The cost of education at community colleges is also fairly affordable in most cases. So it has been a wonderful opportunity to work with community colleges. We have also learned about the importance of working in policy on the policy level to remove artificial barriers in these processes, ranging from unnecessary steps in the licensing pathways that are pretty much there to protect the interests of professional associations and not to protect the public's health. We have work in policy level at the local, the state, and the federal levels, or even at the local, I mean at the community colleges, where we questioned why, in order to get to a particular class, students needed to have an English level 2A instead of 1A. And we found that the reason was no reason, so we were able to remove those kinds of artificial barriers from the process. Working with our colleagues on Imprint, as Deborah was mentioning a bit ago, or people like Teresa Weisel from CCCIE, has been essential in increasing our capacity, in making it easier for us to attain our goal. We have also found that it is imperative to include the population we serve in the planning of the services that we offer in every particular area, because we think we know what they need, but they actually know what they need. And we find oftentimes the case that the participant would love to come to the CSL class we're doing, but he can't come because he is taking care of the children. So what they really need is some kind of childcare that, if provided, would enable them to do what they want to do. Or finding them either in-service training opportunities where they can drop driving an Uber and work as a phlebotomist in a place while they are preparing to take their NCLEX exam. So this kind of coordination with employers, educators, regulators, legislators, and funders is essential in order to be successful in the implementation of these programs. And as Deborah appears here, I'm going to pause and give it back to you. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's great to be able to hear about the value of partnerships, the importance of being able to ask the students themselves, those that do actually have some considerations and some things and some knowledge that they want to be able to share, so that any sort of program that is being constructed or designed or implemented does actually take into account a lot of the specific needs of the population that you're seeking to serve. So thank you so much for sharing with us, Jose Ramon. So Janine, Dr. Janowski, we want to certainly be able to hear from you because, you know, building on what we've heard so far about the role that colleges play in supporting this population, I think that, you know, the folks that are joining us today, it's going to be really exciting for them to hear about how a college like yours looked at the data, looked at the needs of your community members, your immigrant community members, and your student population, and made the decision to actually bring a welcome back model onto your campus, and what that really means for your college in terms of being able to support this immigrant population. So we're really excited to hear from you as you share a little bit about what in fact Richard J. Daley College is doing to actually integrate this population into its programming.
Yes, thank you so much, Deborah. And I thank COAID for the invitation to be here, and my fellow panelists, Teresa and Jose Ramon. You know, we're Richard J. Daley College. We're part of the City Colleges of Chicago system here in Chicago. And Richard J. Daley College serves about 12,000 students. Half of our students are ESL or GED students. The other half of our students come to us for credit or credential, like an associate's degree. And what we begin to understand is many of the folks that come to Daley College are immigrants, just like many folks in Chicago are immigrants, and they come to us with a certification, with a degree from their home country. But they're looking for not only English as a second language, but perhaps another career track. And to think about that they already have been prepared as a professional within their own country, and having to shift career tracks if they choose not to do that is an opportunity that we're missing. So let me tell you a little bit about Illinois. You might be familiar with Chicago being the largest city, but within the state of Illinois, we have 1.8 million immigrants. So about 14% of our population. If we look within Chicago, About 21% are foreign born. And then over 30%, English is not the primary language spoken in the home, as well as the children are not speaking English as a first language. So the next generation of Chicago workforce, it very much are individuals that have joined us as either as an immigrant or a refugee. And if we think about this, we know nationally about 2 million people have a credential from their home country, and they come to us as an immigrant or a refugee, and most of them do not have that opportunity to utilize their skills, very much what we're seeing here at Daley College. And we can talk about the economic burden for that to occur. Namely, there's an estimated loss of $39 billion in wages and $10 billion in tax revenue. So if we're thinking about the health and vitality of an individual, health and vitality of a family, health and vitality of a community and of a city and a nation, working together with those that come to us as immigrants and refugees is quite crucial. When we think about here in Chicago, Daley College is classified as a Hispanic serving institution. And approximately 60% of our students or individuals that come to us have come to us from a Latino country of origin. When we think about that and we think about English as a second language and the individuals that come with us who credential from another country, we started looking around and said, where are there other areas of focus within the city of Chicago that we might partner to create more leverage and what I like to think about as collective impact? We're so fortunate to have an organization here within our part of Chicago called the Chicago Bilingual Nurse Consortium. And what they have been doing is working for years in working with immigrants that come with a credential in nursing from their home country for them to achieve a credential here in the United States and work to be a nurse. So in thinking with them and partnering with them here as a community college, we can think about those other needed resources like my panelists were talking about that help individuals to be successful in integrating in a community. So we have Chicago Bilingual Nurse Consortium that is very much focused on working with folks to achieve that license to serve as a nurse. But all of those other wraparound needs are available through a community college. And if you think about the WelcomeBack Initiative and putting together those individual community organizations, perhaps housed as a community college like we do, it's quite leveraging the resources that each provide. The other thing that had come to our attention, which I know all of you are well aware of, during the pandemic, public health reached out to us. Clinics reached out to us, hospitals reached out to us because they had not only a shortage of healthcare workers, but they had a dearth of healthcare workers that were bilingual or trilingual. So during this time, we here at a community college saw an opportunity. And what we did was create a community health worker program and a health navigator program that was offered in multiple languages. So not only was the education offered in the language, but they were able to go into a work environment, whether that was a healthcare facility, a hospital, a clinic, with the skills that they brought. So we offered the courses as well as provided the opportunity for workplace in both English, in both Arabic, and in Spanish. So thinking of all of those together, we have committed, and I do believe Jose Ramon had done that pretext that there'll be additional WelcomeBack centers announced very shortly, and ours in Chicago will be one of those. So working with partner organizations to bring the strength of a community college, including all those resources for student development, student outreach, English as a second language, as well as the partnerships that we have in the community with significant legacy organizations that have been working in immigrant and refugee populations to help individuals obtain license. So our first is within nursing with our partnership that I was talking about. Then we're moving into accounting and teaching, because we have significant needs in Chicago for not only individuals that are bilingual, but the opportunity to provide to those communities service in the language of first choice as well as in English. So some of the lessons that we have learned thus far is to do this with partnership. And my two panelists had talked specifically about how that can be an opportunity to leverage resources. And that's the way that we're moving forward. But also keeping in mind all those different ways that we think about the benefits of providing opportunities for immigrants and refugees, not only in terms of economic benefits, but social mobility benefits to the individual, as well as a family and the community. So I'll stop there so we have some opportunity for dialogue and questions. And thank you so much to the panelists and for all of us to have this discussion.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. And I love the key themes that are coming out about the importance of partnerships, the importance of being able to ask the questions of the communities themselves and to be able to understand what's available, but where there's also gaps and how in partnership we can come together to be able to address those gaps. We have had some questions that have come through into the chat as well as into the question box. So I might actually start with one that came through, I think, at the start, and it really focuses on, the strategies and the programs that exist that you guys might be aware of to help recruit highly educated individuals into roles as educators, specifically in K through 12. Probably not a surprise to any of you that, shortages exist in a variety of areas, but certainly as we look at the shortage that exists in terms of K through 12 education roles, would love to be able to just hear from you about what you might be hearing from your seats or what you might be learning about from some of your partners about how they're trying to be able to tap into this population to fill some of these employment needs. And I should just note that for the person that put that into the chat, I did actually include a report that was done probably about 2 years ago, and it specifically talked about trying to leverage the skills of those that have international education, specifically in education, to being able to fill some of those gaps. And so I did put that into the chat for those that are interested in actually looking at that report. But certainly if there's any insight you guys might have about some programs that exist at the college level, or whether or not you maybe have even just heard about any of these sort of opportunities to tap into that population within your communities, not necessarily at your colleges.
I can speak to the case of California, where in order to be hired at the community college, you needed to have a master's degree. And when our participants do their equivalencies, in most cases, they have a master's degree. So in many of our health programs, they were hired to be instructors in topics like anatomy or physiology or something like that without many troubles. They had to take they had to apply for the job, they had to be interviewed for the job, and they would get into actually a tenure track position, which over 3 years might give them tenure and has excellent benefits and things. What we do, part of the assessment we do with our participants in Welcome Back is, I said, look at their personal professional history. And oftentimes individuals in health professions have been instructors by the nature of the professions. So sometimes they aim and can be hired also at state universities as lecturers, or sometimes they just wish to pursue the doctoral route and then be hired eventually as faculty in those higher education settings. I have no examples to give you in terms of the K through 12 system, though.
When we here in Chicago, we're doing our due diligence about the need for a Welcome Back Center. One of the things that we had focused on was, of course, nursing and healthcare. But what continually came to our attention was the need for those other two areas in which we're going to focus, accounting and teaching, and specifically through K through 12. Since we're Richard J. Daley College and we're part of the City Colleges of Chicago, we have a strong partnership with Chicago Public Schools. And through that strong partnership, this need is ever the more increasing. And what all of our colleagues, as well as here at Richard J. Daley, have come to realize is immigrants that come to us with a language, specifically here in Chicago, Arabic or Spanish, is a huge demand within the K through 12 school district. So the forge that we're going forward with the Welcome Back Center is to get to exactly the need that this question was purporting within the spirit, is how can immigrants and refugees that come to us, especially those that come with teaching credentials, they will be instrumental, especially within the schools here in Chicago, including the fact that they come to us with additional language proficiency.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And certainly if there's some more resources that anybody else that's joining us as an attendee might be aware of, we encourage you to put that information into the chat as well, so that we can certainly share that information out. We did have another question that just came through that maybe either Jose Ramon, you might be able to answer, or Dr. Janowski, you might be able to answer. It says approximately what percentage of foreign trained medical professionals who enroll in Welcome Back centers achieve a US credential and employment in the healthcare industry, similar to what they did in their home countries? Wondering if you might just be able to provide some data that might be helpful in answering Greg's question.
So in regards to health professionals in general, it depends on the profession and it depends on a number of factors. As I said, the time they've been away from their profession, sometimes age is a factor. The command of the English language when they begin the process is a factor. For the most part, the easiest ones to get through are nurses, as I mentioned before. Physicians, we in the Welcome Back Initiative have served about 8,000 physicians, and we have helped about 300 and something get back into medicine as such. So that's a very challenging conversion. However, as I said, they get into many other jobs that are not the practice of medicine. Some have gone the route of nurse practitioner, or in some cases, physician assistants, but not directly medicine. For dentists, it's very, very, very difficult and very, very expensive. There's lots of barriers in the process to help them relicense in the US as dentists, even as dental hygienists, because the professional association has made sure that that doesn't happen, as has the physician assistant field built obstacles to ensure that foreign trained individuals cannot speak to those pathways. In regards to individuals that choose allied health professions, for example, anesthesiologists or things like that, that choose to go to the anesthesia tech program or the surgical tech programs, those are very easy transitions, and those are programs that are always offered at community colleges. And that's off the top of my head data that I can offer in regards to this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You know, one of the other things that certainly, as I'm seeing some of the questions that have come through, is a little bit of information that might be helpful in understanding one of the barriers that we mentioned earlier on, which is just how do folks end up getting recognition for the international education that they have? And certainly there are organizations such as World Education Services that provide credential evaluations. One of the key things that we like to make sure is mentioned when we talk about organizations specifically is just a note of caution, because you know, if somebody is seeking to pursue a regulated occupation, as those of you that are joining us today may know, but that is very state specific in terms of generally what a state board will allow in terms of the agency to evaluate one's credentials. So certainly I can put some information in the chat that provides some details about the services that WES provides and the type of credential evaluations that are typically on offer, whether that's at a degree to degree level. So you want to know whether or not your bachelor's degree from Burkina Faso equates to a bachelor's degree in the United States, or a course by course evaluation, which typically might be very necessary, especially if someone is seeking to go through a regulated occupation so that they can demonstrate that they've met the core competencies and requirements to sit an examination. But I'll certainly put in some information about that that hopefully might be helpful. I know that there was also another question that came through about how do prospective individuals find out about your offerings, whether they're new students or members of the community that aren't enrolled in a program? What's the different ways that you guys actually might want to offer some suggestions to folks to conduct their outreach, to make sure that they're not missing an opportunity to get prospective individuals that might have experience and education earned abroad at a post-secondary level in this case. But what's the best way that you guys can share in terms of making sure that they find out about information that's helpful and relevant for where they're at?
I think that's one of the challenges that community colleges face, and some of us do it quite well, and others of us need to strengthen how we explicitly articulate what we can do in service to immigrants and refugees and the organizations that serve them. So I put in the chat the link to the Bridging the Gap guide, Deborah, that I referenced we did in partnership with Wes. And that does give some very good strategies for community colleges to better articulate their offerings, especially for this immigrant population. And I would suggest to any of my community college colleagues that you consider very specific pages on your websites, not for international students, but for immigrants and refugees that clearly articulate what you offer and what the processes for admissions, scholarship, credit evaluations, all of those things are. And I'd be happy to talk more specifically about that. CCCIE doesn't provide direct service to immigrants. And so while we from time to time get inquiries from students and help them as much as possible, we have other people, we really serve community colleges in getting that word out to their constituents.
Thank you very much. So it looks as though we're just at about the time for a wrap of our session. Love the fact that there are some questions that are still in here. We'll make sure that we do our part to facilitate through COABE responses to those questions to make sure that we're getting them out to everybody. But I guess maybe in the remaining minute that we have left, wondering if there might just be a quick final thought that one of our panelists would like to share, just to make sure that there's some parting wisdom for folks that are joining us today. I'm happy to leave it open and to see if one of you might want to actually just share some parting words for those that are joining us about how to really ensure that they are supporting this population. Does anybody want to be able to provide the final word on this topic? I can pick.
I'm just going to say one thing quickly, and that's like from the movie, if you build it, they will come. Every Welcome Back Center that we've opened across the country, people have come and continue to come without any advertising or recruitment other than word of mouth. Partnerships and the community knowing about the services is all that it has taken thus far. Partnering with the institutions or programs that are already serving this population. Second, a happy customer, if you wish, spreads the word of mouth very quickly and better than anybody else. We've partnered with ethnic media as well. When we opened the center and we invited CBS to cover it, nobody came. When we invited Univision, they were always there. So think of those routes as well.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So I've gone ahead and I've put my email into the chat. If there's any other questions or things that folks want to be able to reach out to me about, please, I make myself available. But also reach out to COABE and let them know whether or not there's some other information that we can share, and we'll certainly do our part to make sure we pass it along. Thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon. I hope that the session was really valuable and that there's a lot of great takeaways for each of you. And thank you so much to my panelists for joining, and thank you, COABE, for giving us the space to be able to talk about this important issue. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.